Good afternoon, friends. It's Thursday, January 7th, and time for my daily reflection. I'm still processing the events of yesterday in my mind, still struggling with my emotions. Last night, I turned on my normal news about 15 minutes into it because I didn't want to relive the events. I'd unfortunately already seen the posts of vandalism and destruction in the Capitol that angered me, and I didn't want to re-see them. One of the items that caught my attention was a newscast and comments by a counselor who was offering suggestions on how to reclaim mental health if the events of the day were too overwhelming. Her recommendations included take a walk, read a book, turn off the electronic devices, listen to music. I thought, those are things I can do. I thought listening to music today would be calming. I mean, that's a good idea. I wouldn't listen to the radio, to the news channels. I would just come in and work. Now, I already knew that for 2 hours I was going to be involved in a lecture on the Mars Perseverance, and that was exciting. So I figured easy peasy. I would listen to jazz when it was over. Then it struck me. Did I hear those same recommendations over the summer when we were dealing with other moments of turmoil and being overwhelmed? I wondered if this was how we were now being told to distance ourselves from the rioting done by people who look like me, white, as if to say we should decompress and let it go. But those on the news last summer who are also God's people who have been kissed by the sun, as Pastor Otis Moss III says, then we didn't need to compress and let it go at that moment? Now, I don't have an eidetic memory, so I don't remember if indeed those words were said. I hope they were, but maybe they weren't. And an implication then would be that we need to continue to be enraged and overwhelmed by events like the BLM movement of last summer and the call for racial equality and standing and taking knees, because we've not moved very far in our racial equality movements. So as I said, today I have avoided the media. I haven't checked Facebook as often as I do normally. I did enjoy the lecture and I did enjoy the jazz afterwards, but I still found myself being agitated by yesterday's events. Still angry that lies and conspiracy is more believable than truth, that QAnon is now a legitimate source because what, it feeds some strange need for people? Angry that the treatment of those who stormed the Capitol building yesterday with Nazi and Confederate flags waving is nowhere near the treatment of those who over the summer were peacefully gathered in a park across the street from the White House. Those peaceful folks who were pepper sprayed and forcibly moved from the park so that someone we know could stand in front of a church I suspect he's never visited and hold up a Bible that I don't really believe he's ever read. That behavior last summer disgusted me. And I hope that I would have also been disgusted if yesterday's rioters had been pepper sprayed and forcibly moved. Because as they say, two wrongs don't make a right. Now, I heard that some were pepper sprayed, but I only heard that one person said that they were pepper sprayed and it happened after she had set foot inside the Capitol, forcibly set herself inside the Capitol. All that jazz music that I listened to earlier is going to waste as I get agitated again around the way we treat one another in this country. I'm still processing. Still flip-flopping from anger to lashing out, still swinging from rage to hope, still wanting vengeance for inciting such abhorrent behavior, to wondering, what difference will it make? I was asked earlier this morning, How can anyone support Trump after what he created yesterday? I'm not sure that's the question to ask. I think the questions to ask are, what must we do to break down these high walls we have built between ourselves? What must I do? What must you do to tear down the hate and the prejudice? How can you have a calm and civil conversation with those who feel that they are losing everything? I feel as if yesterday was another one of those boiling points in this almost 250 years of simmering that is called America. The fear of losing, the fear of no longer being in control, the feeling that I used to be important and now everyone is moving ahead of me is huge with all of us. Many of us used to feel important, and now we feel as if others are moving to the front of the line. But why does that make me lash out? Why does that feed prejudice? Why does that feed hatred? I don't know. I think back to Mr. Laux, my 7th grade American history teacher, who wanted to impress upon us one specific point, that which we call the United States is a melting pot. He demonstrated that by pointing out all of the various cultures that existed around us in this little town, then 250,000 people, called Huntington Station, New York. He put on the board all of the cultures that he knew of. And we all commented how we either were or knew parts of those cultures. The melting pot. How that melting pot enriched one another. It is probably one of the reasons why I hold on to my ancestral heritages so hard, albeit that they are from Northern Europe. But my ancestors left for lots of reasons. Some, I suspect, were legal reasons. Some were persecutions. Some were wanderlust. But we came into this place. They came into this place and created a new place. And they dealt with new people. It's one of the reasons why I also celebrate my current neighborhood, which has a rich variety of heritages, not just Northern European. And I celebrate the fact that Joan and I have a circle of acquaintances that also have a variety of heritages, not all from Northern Europe, and that's good news. I celebrate the relationships that I have with people who are from Eritrea, as they teach me what it means to be African. Those folks who are Korean and Japanese and Australian of Japanese descent. I celebrate those relationships and friendships that I have with people who are Hispanic and South American and Central American. A melting pot. The circle gets larger and larger. Maybe the question is, why can't we get along? Why are we so afraid? Why? Why? In a true melting pot fashion, this circle, this group, this community of mine, we're not alike, and that's good. We don't all think the same way. We don't all vote the same way. We don't all worship the same way. We don't all live the same way. We don't all love the same way. And yet, in a good melting pot fashion, we don't point fingers, we don't get angry, we don't accuse, we don't lie. We just acknowledge that we're richer for knowing one another. It's the true melting pot, I think, that Mr. Laux wanted us to see back in 7th grade in Huntington Station, New York, on Long Island. Maybe it's my idyllic hope that we will indeed find a way to live together. And perhaps tomorrow, I'll finally get to that epiphany reflection that I wanted to do yesterday of the wise men who come to recognize and to see and to worship God's Son, the incarnate Word. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? We'll have to wait and see. But until then, please, 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 as I've asked you to do regularly, wash your hands a couple of times a day, 20 seconds at a time. Sing happy birthday to yourself as you wash your hands. I learned that's about a 20-second song. Pray a 20-second prayer for civility, peace, harmony in the world, in our hearts, in our nation. Wear your mask, please. Stay 6 feet apart from everybody else who's not part of your family and your household. But importantly, love one another. Even as I have loved you, Jesus says. And in the words of Sergeant Esterhaus, be safe out there. God bless, and see you Sunday.